No, Mark Reddings has not morphed into a younger, more handsome version. That's right, Hamish Brayshaw is sitting with me right here, right now. Shelter FootyCast, Will Schofield and Hamish Brayshaw. Hammer, how are you, mate?
Yeah, fantastic. Good to be back. Thank you. Yeah. Sorry, Skeet.
I probably should say I'm the more handsome, younger version of Mark Reddings because he was here last time, right?
He was there last year.
In my seat.
Yep, I was sitting right here and he was in your chair, but looking a little bit more professional. But you look a lot more comfortable.
Yeah, correct. That is very good. Did you organise that? I mean, I left for 1 week and I'd lost my seat. Did you speak?
No,
about that?
he just said, "You sit here, mate. I'm going to take the reins today and sit in the host chair."
Very good. Shelter FootyCast here, live from BackChat Studios. That's the Southern River Band, the local lads out of Thornley. They are currently on a national tour with the Darkness. You know who the Darkness is, or are you too young for that?
Too young for the Darkness.
Okay, very good. I'm going to keep moving. Yeah, don't. It's like, what? Skeeter didn't know it either. See, I think there was a specific moment of time. Anyway, we move on. West Australian team, Eagles and Dockers, we get through them. It's going to be a bit of a trade review here on the Shelter FootyCast this week. Socials, you know where to follow us. Shelter FootyCast on Instagram, FootyCast at shelterbrewing.com.au. We do have some fan mail this week. It came through. So I'm hoping Dan's got that at the back end of this run sheet. That'd be terrific. If you do want to send us an email, you can send it to us there, footycast at shelterbrewing.com.au. Follow us on YouTube. Follow us on podcasts. You know what to do. Shelter, born and brewed in Busselton, WA. Hammer, I'm out of breath, but let's get into it. Trade period.
Yep.
Look, it probably is about 7 days too long. It can go for but it's been monetised, commercialised, money coming in now. There was a fair bit going on yesterday, but we're going to do a review of it all. Did you sit back and watch it? I mean, you're in Clubland a little bit at West Coast. Do you sit back and watch it all, or are you just tuning in for the last 10 minutes because that's probably all you needed to do?
Yeah, where it all happened. I turned my AFL notifications on my phone so that I could, whenever something popped up, I'd get the read on it. But to be honest, like, you just sit back and as you said, the last 10 minutes is where the last day or two is where the majority of it happens. So nothing really goes on in the first week that's much excitement.
There was a very big trade that went down, and there was the biggest trade in trade history. There was numerous picks changed hands. The number one draft pick, Jason Horne-Francis, moved from his initial club over to Port Adelaide.
Yep.
You boys spoke about it, I think, on Monday.
Mm-hmm.
Did you think he was going to go? And what do you think about the number one pick moving from his club who drafted him after just 1 year?
No, I didn't think he was going to go.
Wow.
I didn't think North Melbourne would allow it, but I also didn't think that he would sign a 6-year contract on the back of leaving, on the back of a okay to interrupted year at an average team in the season to then go and sign for 6. I mean, I certainly wouldn't be knocking it back if I was Jason Horne-Francis, but no, that was I did not expect that.
Yeah, it's an interesting move by Port Adelaide, like a 6-year deal for a midfielder who's played 1 year. He's had, he dropped for not doing an eye spin. I don't know.
He didn't set the world alight in any game.
You've been in Clubland though.
Yep.
Getting dropped for not doing an eye spin. Did that ring? Did that seem like that would be why he would be dropped?
No, that was, in my humble opinion, it physically couldn't have been the reason.
Correct.
There's got to be something else going on behind the scenes, and I don't want to say too much more.
We've got 6 years to find out what was going on behind the scenes. Now this trade, right, the mega trade. Listen to this. I've got a bit of time to get through this. So it was North Melbourne, Port Adelaide, West Coast, GWS. North Melbourne. I'm going to go the ins and outs for each side, and we're gonna name who won out of this trade, right? Mm-hmm. In pick 2, pick 3, pick 40, pick 43, future first round pick tied to Port Adelaide. So it'll be dependent on how Port Adelaide go next year. Out, Jason Horne-Francis, as spoken about, as well as pick 1, and a future third tied to Fremantle somehow. I don't know how that's jumped in there. Freo's jumped in. So that's North Melbourne's stake. Port Adelaide get in Jason Horne-Francis, Junior Rioli from West Coast, future second, future third. Out. Pick 8, pick 43, pick 53, pick 57, future first, future second, future third. So they're just dilly-dallying out picks. Do you think just on Port Adelaide, I mean, they get in Jason Horne-Francis, Junior Rioli, and they spend a bunch of picks to do it, but it's not they haven't had to spend any players.
No, I think that's a win. And looking at them, they've got enough, I think, young talent that a pick 8, yes, it certainly helps, but you look at the rest of them, pick 43, 53, 57, that sort of, you roll the dice on some kids there, and I think they've got enough young talent to probably make that worthwhile.
On that point, Port Adelaide have had the most first-round picks outside of GWS and Gold Coast out of the last 4 years. So
Yeah.
they've actually built their list on the back of draft, not trade. They've got Horn Francis and Rioli as a bit of a top-up. They were chasing Esava Radagalia from Geelong, didn't get that done. They didn't have a good year last year. They went 0-5 to start the year. Does Horn Francis and Junior Rioli and a couple more picks, does that elevate them into the top 8 and help them challenge for a premiership next year? Because that's where they're positioning themselves for.
Yeah, I mean, I think Junior Rioli certainly has got that experience to probably add a little bit of something, whereas, as I've previously said, the jury's still out for me on JHF.
Yes.
But I think they'll still, they'll be good players that will elevate them a little bit, and I think a bit more than a pick 53 probably would.
West Coast are involved in this one as well. For our West Australian listeners, pick 8, pick 12, a future second, a future third. They come in the door for Junior Rioli, pick 2, pick 40. GWS involved from a pick standpoint in this one too. They get pick 1, pick 53, pick 57, but lose pick 3, pick 12, future second. So I think these bottom 2, West Coast and GWS, I think they're the losers out of this deal. North Melbourne, Port Adelaide. I think they get what they want. North Melbourne, they split their pick 1 for pick 2 and 3. Yes, they lose Horn Francis, but he wanted out anyway. They get a future first as well. West Coast, they split their pick 2, but they get 8 and 12. So they do move a little way back. Only time will tell what sort of players they get at 8 and 12 instead of pick 2. But I just think maybe that split, I don't know, you'd like to split a pick 2 with 2 top 10 picks, and they don't quite get that done, and they lose Junior Rioli as well, who 2018 I think was in best players for West Coast in a premiership year. We're a long way removed from that now, but I think they end up losing. And GWS, who I might get you to speak about, they move up to pick 1. Congrats, well done, you get pick 1. But they lose pick 3, so they haven't moved up from pick 40. Yeah. They've moved from pick 40 to pick 3 to pick 1, and then a couple of other picks thrown around. They also lose pick 12 in the deal, and then we'll get to them a little later on, but they lose half their midfield as well during this trade period.
Yeah.
GWS and West Coast in this mega trade, I don't see them as winners, do you?
Well, I personally, and I'll touch on it a little bit, I think I see West Coast as winners in this.
Good.
I think the way they've traded pick 2, even though it is, you would prefer 2 in the top 10, but 8 and 12 I think lands them right around the mark of some pretty good WA talent that they might have gone after earlier anyway. So I think that's probably where their head's at, and I reckon.
Was one of them an East Perth lad?
Yeah, he was an East Perth lad. Who? Young Ruben Ginby, a gun. He's a star, that kid.
Tell me, did he play seniors with you?
Yeah, he played league and then went to, was it Wesley, captain of Wesley? So played at Wesley and then played state footy and won the WA MVP. So
where's he play? What sort of position? What sort of player is he?
Halfback, but now he dominated the midfield through the carnival and played midfield for us in the back end of the year.
So you kept him out of the midfield while you were going about win the best and fairest and second
sorry,
in Sandover?
Ruben, but no, he's 190 centimetres. He's quick. He's a left footer. He's strong. He's coachable, and he's just a star.
I cannot wait to just clip this up and play this when West Coast read out. Pick 8 or pick 12?
Pick 8. He'll go 8. Unless he goes earlier, which will hurt West Coast.
Oh boy, I like that a lot. Let's get into that's the big deals of the round. End of trade period, all up 32 trades and free agency signings were made involving 34 players. I think that's a record. It was who knows? Dan's like nodding, shaking. Who knows? It was a lot of players. Let's just say. Biggest in decades for sure. I think it's only been going for a couple of decades, so that's probably a record.
Probably the biggest.
Let's get into West Coast and Freo. Will Schofield, Hamish Brayshaw, shout out FootyCast. Fremantle. Look, let's grade both of these teams, the West Australian sides. Let's start with Freo. We spoke a little bit about West Coast off the top. Fair bit going on for Freo. So I'm going to go through most of the sides. We may skim through a couple, just given timing restrictions. But I'm going to go through ins and outs, maybe some draft picks left over. And for a couple of these, I was thinking about your strengths and weaknesses as a host, right? And you've got a lot of strengths, got to be honest. Didn't come up with many weaknesses. But
beautiful
strengths, wit, humour. So I thought maybe, as I'm going through these, I know you're a big movie fan. Perhaps you could just give me how these clubs have gone in relation to a Hollywood movie of some description.
Understood.
Okay?
Sure.
So I gave you a bit of time to think about these. So if you have any, just jump in and go through it. Fremantle, fair bit going on here. Josh Corbett, Luke Jackson, Jaeger O'Meara come into the football club.
Yep.
Jaeger O'Meara. I need to stop saying Jaeger.
Yeah, Jaeger bombs. Come on,
Too-
Joey. Too many Jaeger.
No, seriously. Here
Yeah,
comes
I know. I had one the other night after the BNF.
Did you?
Yeah,
How
Jaeger
did
bomb
that
at
taste?
Hippie Club. Oh, goodness me, it tasted glorious.
Traded out Blake Acres, Darcy Tucker, Griffin Logue, Rory Lobb, Lloyd Meek. Let me take a breath. A fair bit moving out the door there. They keep a couple of draft picks, but let's be honest, they're not going to be going to the draft because they've moved in all in with Luke Jackson. They think their time is now to win a premiership. Flag mantle is now, not 2022, maybe 2023.
Fingers crossed.
How do you assess Freo's trade period? A fair bit going on.
Yeah, heaps going on. So relating this to a movie.
Oh, good, great.
I'll assess their actual trade afterwards, but just in terms of a movie, I'm not sure if you've seen the movie The Expendables before.
No, I haven't.
Let me read you the cast.
Okay.
Sylvester Stallone, Jason Statham, Jet Li, Bruce Willis, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Terry Crews, Wesley Snipes, Randy Couture, Mickey Rourke, Mel Gibson, Harrison Ford, Jean-Claude Van Damme, Chuck Norris,
Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Steve Austin, Liam Hemsworth. There is lots going on in this movie.
That's the action heroes for the last 20 years.
For the last ever. And all the movie is basically just a bunch of old, jacked up action guys going in to save the day and blow stuff up and fight things. And it's just incredible to sit and watch for 2 hours. And that is the Fremantle trade period. Just stuff happening left and right. All of a sudden, Tip and Woody was coming out of retirement to go to Freo.
Conor McKenna
was coming back. Jeremy Sharp was coming over. There was heaps going on. And players were leaving. Lobb was only going to go until the last 5 seconds. And so that's The Expendables for me.
Okay, good. Okay, I have heard of this movie. So The Expendables, if we use that name as well, they got rid of a few players, right? There was a few expendable players.
Yeah,
if
there
you don't
was.
mind me just
Well
that
done.
bow.
Thank you. 1, 2, 3.
Blake Acres, Darcy Tucker, Griffin Logue, Rory Lobb, Lloyd Meek. I know there's no superstars in that, and they get some stuff in return for those players, but do you think from a role-playing point of view, those group of players, I think you and I are fair to say we've been role players in our time. Do you think moving on a big group of role players like that creates a gap in Freo's list that's not replaceable, or do they have the youth coming through that can actually replace what they've lost?
I think Blake Acres, Tucker and Logue are going to be tough ones to replace in terms of those role players. Blake Acres played really well this year to start on the wing, and Griff was able to go down back and hold his own and then go up forward and play well, and Tucker was one of those guys that if injuries came in, he was ready to go. I think Lloyd Meek, while yes, he's a really good player, they've got Luke Jackson in now, so they just didn't need him anymore. And Lobb, for a bloke that for the last 2 years said he didn't want to be there, I don't think they mind too much getting rid of him.
No, I think I probably agree with you. I spoke to Peter Bell last night on 6PR and asked him the question, do they need a bit of depth at ruck, right? So, yes, they get Jackson in, but they lose 2 backup ruckmen in Lobb and Meek. Who's the best ruckman in the waffle? Because the answer that Peter Bell gave me was a little bit of an inkling that maybe they'd look to the state leagues for some backup. Who's the best guy in the waffle that could potentially find himself on an AFL list?
Well, Scott Jones, I think East Perth ruck is as good a ruck as there is in the waffle. But
and he spent some time at Freo before,
he spent a couple of years at Freo before, and now he's back and trudging around the state leagues, and I think he had 700 plus hit outs this year or something, and was just phenomenal. But I think the best young ruck is a guy called Hamish Free out at South Freo. So he's, I'm not sure how old he is, but he's younger than Jonesy, and he moves around the ground well, and he just gets his hands on the foot. He's a big, tall boy, and so I think in terms of young, talented rucks, he'd be the guy.
Okay, very good. There you go, the Expendables, Freo. Let's move on to West Coast. Adversely, there wasn't a whole lot going on for West Coast. They were involved in the big deal, right? And they had picks going left, right, and centre, but it was very mainstream. Jaden Hunt he signs as a restricted free agent or an unrestricted free agent, one of those. I get confused by them. Junior Rioli leaves the club. He requests that to happen. They miss out on Luke Jackson, which I don't know if they were ever really in the conversation, especially hearing Luke Jackson speak during the week. Yes, he met with them, but it sounded like his heart was with Fremantle from the get-go. So perhaps they were just trying to push the price up for the Freo Dockers. I don't know.
I like that.
They keep draft picks 8, 12, 20, 26. So they have 4 picks inside the top 26 picks. Have you got a movie for me?
Yeah, I do. So this might you might not get around this one because you were a fan of them keeping 2, were you?
Look, yeah, no, I wasn't. I do like splitting it. I think they would have, if possible, they would have liked to have kept the picks lower. But in the end, if you're splitting it, you can't just you can't split, 6 and 10 would have been better, but
6
8
and
and
10
12
would-
is the
8 and
only
12.
thing is
I don't think it's
available.
that much different.
Yeah.
So I've gone with the Lord of the Rings.
Okay.
Have you seen these movies?
Frodo and Co.
Have you seen these?
Yes,
trilogy? Yeah,
absolutely.
so-
Like all-time classics.
One of the all-time classics. I've actually just rewatched it last week, the three of them, so
Did
it's
you?
fresh in my mind. But instead
Busy man, eh?
busy man, yeah. So, what the baseline of the story for those, if you haven't seen it, go and watch it. Fantastic. But-
Rewatched Lord of the Rings. I
Yeah.
just couldn't love that. The
So,
trilogy.
yeah, the trilogy.
Okay.
Extended edition too, 4.5 hours a piece. Anyway, so
What's this extended edition?
have you never seen the extended edition?
No.
Oh boy, there's the extended cut is before Peter Jackson cut everything off the table.
So is this the extended cut, or are we just
I've
talking
watched the
original?
extended
no,
cut.
are we talking West Coast, the extended cut?
No,
or
West Coast the original. The storyline is the same. You just
Sorry.
get a lot more good stuff in the extended.
Please tell me why.
Anyway, the movie goes. The storyline is the Ring of Power. Sauron, Dark Lord of Mordor, has created this ring. He's gone years ago, but he's coming back, and someone finds this ring, and it's passed down to Frodo Baggins, who's just a lonely little hobbit, and has to take it from his house in the Shire to the fiery depths of Mount Doom and drop it in the volcano.
Who's who?
Anyway, I will get to it. West Coast is Frodo.
Right.
The ring is pick 2.
Right.
It's the pick of power, not the ring of power.
okay.
Obviously, in a rebuild. They're happy living in the Shire for years. West Coast have been in the finals, winning flags, happy and living their life. All of a sudden, here comes Sauron. COVID, old people getting hurt, things dropping off, and they've had a torturous year, which is what is happening in Middle Earth at the moment.
Right.
And West Coast have got to go with pick 2 to right the wrongs of the season and fix their football club.
Right.
What happens in the film is the ring has its mind of its own and corrupts Frodo for a little bit. He starts turning bad. There's signs of him going evil. He wants to keep the ring. He doesn't want to get rid of it. He wants to just hold on to this.
Yes.
And that is what I've heard of signs of West Coast this year. They wanted to hold on to pick 2. I'm not splitting it. This is we
need to lose more
We need to
games.
lose. Our salvation is to be this number 1 pick. And I have been sitting here as a spectator, obviously, of Lord of the Rings and the West Coast this year, thinking, why would you not split? You obviously need to rebuild. One good player, you're still going to get 2 good players at 8 and 12. You need to split the pick. I think there's been a lot of people who have been saying split the pick, get a couple high, and that is Lord of the Rings. Holding on to that one thing, corrupted him for a little bit, but right at the end, okay, splitting the pick, throws it in the fire, game over.
Are you saying that you're Samwise? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm Samwise. I've been a spectator this whole journey. I've been telling him inside the club, hey, split pick 2, split pick 2. I haven't actually, but I've been thinking it. And finally tossed the ring into the fiery pits of Mount Doom.
There you go, Lord of the Rings. West Coast split the ring, split the pick. Good job. I
There you
absolutely couldn't have. That's when I thought of this idea of you relating movies. What you've just done for the last 2 minutes is exactly
what you thought.
what I wanted. Shelter FootyCast. That's West Coast and Freo. You be the judge. See how they went. Only time will tell. Will Schofield, Hamish Brayshaw. All right, I think we've been rattling on a little bit, so we're going to have to skim through some of these, which is absolutely fine because it's been a big trade period, and if your team's in here and we don't get to it, I'm sorry. But also, Adelaide, the big move for them is they get in Isaac Rankin. This happens every time with Adelaide. I just don't pay attention to him enough. Isaac Rankin comes into the football club.
Yep.
South Australian, returning home, been in the Gold Coast for 4 years. Was a high pick when he left. I think you mentioned last week the pick that they had to give the Gold Coast got from Adelaide was actually higher than what he was drafted at. Is that right?
Yeah, I can't remember what he was drafted at. But Gold Coast got pick 5 for him, which was better than what he was worth at the time, I think. He might have been 6 or 7.
We haven't seen Isaac Rankin play in the midfield at AFL level. So I've effectively recruited a dangerous small forward for pick 5. Do you guess or no from you?
It's probably a bit high, but there's certainly a lot of upside to him. So
overall rating for Adelaide, I think it's probably a good move. They've got a young team. They lose Billy Frampton, but they've got enough key position talent coming through. I give him a B-ish somewhere.
Yeah.
But it's above just a pass. Like
happy with a B.
they get a good player into the club.
Yep.
They lose pick 5. They probably could have used that. He was pick 3 originally.
Well, there you go.
So
shows how much we care about Adelaide and Isaac Rankin.
thank you very much, Dan,
There
for
you
making us
go.
look like absolute idiots. Brisbane, they get their men. Jack Gunston, Josh Dunkley come into a team that is challenging for a premiership. They have been around the mark for 3 or 4 years. They haven't been able to get it done in finals time. And I've got to be honest, Josh Dunkley's been one of the most consistent players in the AFL for that period of time. So to get him in after winning in best and fairest at Western Bulldogs for a pretty cheap price, I think they pay for future first and like a I don't know, mid-pick involved in a bit of a
Yeah.
convoluted swap. I don't think they pay overs for Josh Dunkley. Jack Gunston comes into a forward line that loses Dan McStay to Collingwood.
Yep.
But Eric Hipwood, Joe Danaher still exist. I think Jack Gunston...
Eric Hipwood, the bug. Oh, boy.
Why is he the bug? Got big eyes?
No, do you not remember that game at the Gabba that you were playing on him and I was abusing him from the crowd? And sorry.
Please, no.
So we were all sitting up there after a
yes.
scrimmage
Oh,
in the
my gosh.
morning, and Scully was playing full back, just niggling Hipwood as he used to do, and just elbows in the back, and Hipwood was having a dirty old time.
This is at the Gabba,
This is
right?
at the Gabba.
When we're in the hub.
And there's me, Jake Waterman, all the boys that have played the scrimmage in the morning, hating life, just yelling at Eric Hipwood, "Oh, it's a bad day to look like a bug," screaming at
A lot
this
of
bloke.
abuse.
A lot of abuse. Anyway.
And there wasn't a lot of people in the crowd either, so
No,
you could
there
hear
wasn't.
everything.
You could hear everything. And there was a group of people in the seats just in front of us, about 15 metres. Anyway.
How long have you been going on for?
This is
Almost
all the
first
first
half?
quarter. No, the first quarter, just ripping through this poor Eric. Anyway, you could see that the group in front of us was a little bit upset. And then at quarter time, this guy comes up to us from that little group and starts chatting away. "Oh, you guys with West Coast? Yeah, what'd you do this morning? Had the scrimmage? Yeah, good on you. How long are you here for? Blah, blah. Oh, what's your name? Oh, I'm Hamish Brayshaw. Nice to meet you." He's like, "Oh, nice to meet you. I'm, can't remember the bloke's first name, but he's like, I'm Eric Hipwood's dad." Oh, boy. So, sorry, Eric. It was all fun and games.
Jack Gunston compliments Eric Hipwood very well in the forward line. Very nicely done. Carlton, we move on to them. Traded in Blake Acres.
Yep.
Traded out Liam Jones, Will Setterfield. Liam Jones, a bit of an asterisk against his name because...
Didn't really trade him out. He quit, didn't he?
traded himself out.
Yep.
And moves to Western Bulldogs for free.
Yeah.
I got to be honest, looking at the whole
Not
trade
happy with
period... That is one of the biggest moves by the Western Bulldogs, and they've got him for free, and he's just left Carlton.
I'm not happy with that. I wonder, if, for example, if Tip and Woody had have gone to Fremantle, would Essendon have got anything for him because he retired?
Probably not, right?
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't sit too well with me.
Can Tip and Woody still go to Freo? Like in the, I don't know, can they draft him?
Yeah, I think he still can.
Is that maybe why they couldn't trade him in?
Maybe, but he's unrestricted, retired free agent, I guess, if they want him. Anyway.
Liam Jones out, although they weren't playing with him. I think Blake Acres is a pretty big in. Like you said, he played a pretty big role for Freo this year. How do you rate them overall, Carlton? I mean, they don't...
No, I think it's probably a C. Just you walk away and you think, well, there you go.
Collingwood were pretty active in the trade period. So they got Bobby Hill, Dan McStay, bye Dan, if you can hear the garage in the background. Thanks for coming.
See you later, Dan McStay. Dan McGo. Come on. There it is.
Dan McDo. Billy Frampton. Have you seen much of Billy Frampton play?
Not a whole heap.
Okay. Tom Mitchell. You seen much of him play?
Yeah.
Brownlow medalist.
Yeah, Brownlow medalist. Accumulator.
How does he go in?
Ball magnet.
A Collingwood midfield of Chris, Pendlebury, Dacos, and Co. Does he add something to that team?
I think he certainly adds 35 a game to any midfield that he goes to.
Do you think he maybe doesn't go inside as much though? Maybe he plays
plays a bit more on the outside, maybe on the wing, gets around. But I think with enough quality ball users around him, he'll certainly add something to the team.
They lost Brodie Grundy and Ollie Henry, a couple of good players.
Mm-hmm.
So does that bring their draft ranking down a little?
Well, I look at it and say probably not. Ollie Henry's an out, but Brodie Grundy didn't play a whole heap for them this year, and they were able to do a lot of what they did without him. So I think their game style is set up around the pressure and just run and carry and gun. And, he was not a part of a lot of it. So
I think that's a cross mark against offering huge contracts to anyone, really.
Oh, yeah, no question.
So Jason Horne-Francis would be an example, but we've seen some of them come across. We'll get to Richmond, but Hopper and Taranto both signed really big deals. It's just fraught with danger, no matter how good the player is. So 3 years ago, if I said to you, Brodie Grundy would be being traded to Melbourne to play alongside Max Gawn,
you would have laughed.
If you said that in 2019,
Yeah.
you're like, what's next? A global pandemic?
Yeah, exactly.
So it would not have even crossed your mind. So they signed him to a 7-year deal. He can't get a game 2 years later from Darcy Cameron, who, got to be honest, came to the football club from Sydney, was unproven, but you spend time in the middle without a challenge, and you can see what a good player he is.
And there he goes. I think a lot of clubs get that false sense of confidence from the Buddy Franklin deal. It was a 9-year deal. That's probably the only long-term one that's really set the world on fire, and he hasn't sort of set a foot wrong. But
so you rate Collingwood pretty highly?
yeah, I think
trade period?
I think they've had a good certainly think they've done well.
Essendon, I'm going to skim through this because they didn't do a whole lot. They lose Aaron Francis. They missed out on quite a few. I don't think that's a destination club, if I'm going to be honest.
I wouldn't have thought so, no.
They're rumorings that they've got another board spill coming. The coach situation's been an absolute shit show.
Yeah, so that's a DNF. DNS did not show up to the exam and doesn't get a grade.
That is correct. A bit of like Happy Gilmore about it if we're just a bit of a joke, really.
Yep, correct.
Oh, absolutely, very good. Geelong. What about Geelong? I think this is the team that won the trade period for mine.
No question.
A+. Start it there. Mm-hmm. They win the premiership. They go to trade period and they want to improve their list. How do they do that? Well, I'll tell you how they do that. They get in effectively four first round players by Tanner Bruin from GWS.
Yep.
Jack Bowes comes in from Gold Coast. Ollie Henry comes in from Collingwood. And a part of Bowes, they get pick 7. So effectively the Premiers, they get 4 picks coming back the other way.
It's ridiculous. So I've got a movie for this one. I'm sure you've seen The Italian Job.
Yes.
So
they get like drive little
minis, Coopers, and steal heaps of gold. And this is just a great heist movie. And this is one of the great heists of our time, I think, the Geelong trade period.
Right.
To win a premiership, go and get... So Jack Bowes from Gold Coast was picked 10 in 2016, I think he was.
Yep.
And has fallen out of favour with the club, and they signed him on a big deal and probably weren't paying him a bit overs.
Long-term contract,
paying him overs. And so Gold Coast have traded to Geelong, Jack Bowes and pick 7 for a future third-round pick.
Like pick 7 as a sweetener on top of a pick 10 player.
Yeah, so, but I look at that. Will Brodie was a pick inside the top 10 as well, and he was out of favour at Gold Coast, and look what he's doing at Freo. So I don't think Jack Bowes is a bad player.
Yeah.
And so, there's those two. Ollie Henry is a star, and they've got him in.
Reportedly better than his brother, Jack Henry, who I think was All-Australia, or at least in the squad.
Yeah. And then Tanner Bruin is a young gun at GWS. So for the fact that they've won a premiership, they've come out and just gone, I'll give you a future third rounder for those 2 top 10 picks.
So who's who in the Italian Job? Is Stephen Wells driving the crew of Mini Coopers around?
Yeah, Stephen Wells is Matt Damon. He's driving the crew around. He's orchestrating this heist. He's blowing up banks. He's running away with the gold. And they get to the end of the movie and they're just laughing, sitting at this place going, well, cheers.
Isn't there an Italian Job too? Don't they
I reckon
doing
they
it?
keep doing it. I reckon they might go back for more.
Could be a dynasty coming up.
Oceans 11, 12, 13, all the rest of it.
Very good. A+ for Geelong. They absolutely dominate. Gold Coast, the next 2 teams, I'm going to skim through them because I think they were both the worst performed.
No question.
So Gold Coast, they get in Ben Long, Tom Berry, who may or may not challenge for top 22 spots, I've got to be honest. Ben Long's been playing for St Kilda, some games there, but St Kilda aren't very good.
He was a sub a bit and he was out. Yep.
That's correct. They lose Josh Corbett to Freo, Isaac Rankin, a star, Jack Bowes, potentially a star, and they don't do much else. I've got them down at about a D. They
generous too.
They lose players and don't get any real players back. GWS I had as the worst in the trade period.
And no question.
It was questioned by someone quite high up at the GWS that made contact with me last night after I put out an article saying that they were a D- and weren't too happy because they get in pick 1. Right, that's a positive. It's a positive.
You can't knock back a pick 1.
Right, so they get in pick 1 through some trades of picks in that big mega deal, but they're coming from 3. Like I don't think it's not like they've come outside the top 20 and come into pick 1. Like they've effectively moved up 2 spots. Hopefully that's a better play for them, but they lose some good players. It doesn't matter what situation is around those players. They lose good players. Bobby Hill leaves. Tim Taranto leaves. Tanner Bruin leaves. Jacob Hopper leaves. Taranto and Hopper have been their starting midfield for the last couple of years.
Taranto won a best and fairest as a 20-year-old.
Yeah, so you can't say he's not a talented player. Maybe they were on too much money. Whatever the situation is, they still lose.
They still lose pretty good talented players.
Starting midfielders.
And I don't think you can rest your laurels and everything on pick 1 because looking back over the last 10, 15 years, pick 1 isn't always a success.
We actually did this on BackChat. We only compared pick 1 and pick 2. We probably should have gone pick 1 for the best player in the draft. So, for instance, 2006, pick 1 is Bryce Gibbs.
Yep.
And Joel Selwood goes pick 7. So Joel Selwood's the best pick out of that draft. Like, where does the best player come? It's sometimes pick 1. Of course it is. There's some great number 1.
Great number 1 players. But
Sam Walsh, a great player.
Yep.
Was Chris Judd pick 1? No, he was pick 3. Luke Hodge was
pick 1, but he probably wasn't the best in that draft.
Well, good player.
Great player.
Four-time premiership
What
player.
I think about the pick 1, though, is it adds a lot of pressure. And if you're trying to build your team around a pick 1, which they're obviously saying by getting rid of all these guys to get that in, they're whether consciously or not, they're lumping a lot of pressure on whoever they pick up.
I don't think it's a positive thing when people leave your footy club if they're good players.
Yeah, I agree.
Whether or not what their contracts look like, I don't think it's positive. Hawthorn, off the back of the 3G, so top of the table Geelong, a couple of bottom of the table Hawthorn, they've gone full-blown rebuild.
Absolutely.
So their 2021 leadership group, right? Ben McAvoy was the captain, retired. Liam Shields retired. Jack Gunston, traded.
Brisbane.
Tom Mitchell, traded. Jager O'Meara, traded. The only player remaining from last year is James Warple. So I think that's just...
The Warpedo.
That's an incredible turnover of the leadership
my goodness
group.
It is.
So they don't have any senior players. Like James Sicily's like the oldest player. They've got Chad Wingard. They've got a couple of other senior guys running around, but basically kids.
Luke Bruce.
Yeah, Luke Bruce, correct.
He'd almost be the captain next year. Yeah.
He hasn't been in a leadership group, Luke Bruce. So I think he's sort of...
happy to just go about his business.
He's been a great player for a long time.
Yeah.
Do you like that strategy? Like they've ripped the Band-Aid off.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's tough because if you think you're still a chance to win games, which I think West Coast did, they kept all their older guys in and said we're rolling the dice, and that didn't work. Whereas Hawthorn are pretty honest with where they're at and just said, well, the retirees you can't do much about, but they've got Lloyd Meek in for McAvoy, and I think he's going to be a really good player. And so, I like the strategy.
All right, let's go through the next three. Just say big ins and outs. Melbourne, biggest in.
Grundy.
Brodie Grundy.
Yeah, massive in. Biggest out, Jackson, probably.
Yeah, Jackson, more than likely. Does Grundy and Gawn work as a ruck partnership in the AFL?
I think yes.
Where do you play? Who's going to ruck? And where do you play the one that's not rucking? Said this last night.
Yeah.
Couldn't be answered.
No.
What are you going to play Brodie Grundy at full forward?
Yeah. Forward pocket.
Please.
He's
not a forward. He's a ruckman. They're both every stoppage ruckman. I don't like it at all, as you can hear.
Yeah, I can accept that, but I just think you get 100% of the game with as good a ruckman as there is in the comp.
Okay, very good. North Melbourne, biggest in for them, Griffin Logue.
Yeah.
It's only Griffin Logue and Darcy Tucker, so you're going to pick between the two.
Yeah, Griffin Logue or Picks.
Traded out, Jason Horne-Francis, probably the biggest one.
Yep.
Given he was the only player they moved on.
The Hornet.
Where do they sit? They don't have a coach at the moment. He's not in the building. They won the Wooden Spoon last year. They lose their number one pick.
Yeah.
They're obviously rebuilding.
Diabolical.
Yes.
That's that franchise at the moment. Okay. And as a avid North Melbourne supporter growing up,
were you?
Yeah, loved my Kangas. I was all for them. And
have you swapped? Do you go for someone else now?
I support West Coast still, but they're never like I'll watch Andrew play, I watch Angus play, and I just watch football. Fan. Yeah, footy fan. But as an avid North Melbourne fan for a very, very long time, it just pains me to see what's going on there.
Wow, I didn't know that.
The place is a shambles. They've got. Well, Horne-Francis wanted out. Your number one draft pick wants to leave. You got Alistair Clarkson in. I was happy with that. And now all of a sudden he might not coach again, and hope he does. But it's it's a tough spot to be for the North Melbourne Footy Club.
All right, let's keep moving. Port Adelaide, we know what they've done. We've spoken about them. Jason Horne-Francis, Junior Rioli come in. I think they do quite well. They're right up there with best performance of the trade period.
Yep.
Richmond, Tim Taranto, Jacob Hopper added to a midfield with Dusty Martin, Trent Cotchin, Shai Bolton, Dion Prestia.
Yep.
Is that the best midfield in the comp?
Oh, it'd be nudging Melbourne's now.
Name-wise?
Yeah, Melbourne's is still right up there.
Yep.
Petrarca, Oliver, Brayshaw, Viney, Gawn, Grundy.
Bulldogs have still got a...
Yeah, Bulldogs got it.
They lose Dunkley and Hunter.
They lost Hunter, but it's still McRae, Bontempelli, Liberatore,
yep,
and English in the ruck. That's probably what lets them down a little bit.
Yeah,
but English is a pretty good player. Yeah, it's right up there now, the Tigers.
Okay, well, do they challenge for the premiership next year?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. St Kilda literally do nothing.
No.
This is a movie about nothing. So, there's this movie I watched on a plane one time while travelling from West to East Coast, and I'm terrible with movie names and usually plots, but this one was just based inside. He was buried alive. I think it was called Buried.
Buried,
and it was just in a coffin for the entire movie, and he died. That was the movie.
That's the movie.
So it was Ryan Reynolds. I'm pretty sure it was Ryan Reynolds.
Ryan Reynolds. Wow.
And he's buried. He gets captured, and the very first scene the door shuts on him, and he has a mobile, and he's got a lighter, and it's just a whole lot of going on about him trying to get out. He eventually gets a walkie-talkie working. dies.
And dies.
Yeah, they bomb him at the end.
That's-
Sorry for giving it away, but if I look at St Kilda, that's pretty much. I'll give away what happens next year. They're not very good.
Yeah.
And they don't
Have you
win
seen
the flag.
Have you ever heard of the movie The Room?
No. Is it the same?
No, The Room is, by all reports, the worst movie ever made on the history of the planet. And James Franco did a parody of it called The Disaster Movie. And The Room is this rich guy who's just thought, I'm going to make a movie myself. And it's like, it is just appalling. There's just, the acting is horrible.
Yes, I've seen this. It's like, yeah, it's like and then James Franco did like almost like a reverse doco or something on it.
Yeah, did like a fake movie on it. You should do yourself a favour and
I've
look
seen
up
it.
The Room highlights. It is just so bad. It's
So
hilarious.
Is that St Kilda?
That's St Kilda.
Okay, very good. Sydney, Aaron Francis come in, but they're going to try and go back to back with pretty much the same crew they've got. I like Aaron Francis. He's 24-year-old. I think he succeeds in a Sydney backline if that's where they're going to play him. They've been for a long time had this culture. We talk about the Bloods, but their backline has been like hard lockdown defenders.
Jeez,
hard.
you love your backs, don't you?
Oh, absolutely, and I know all about them too.
Yeah.
They're just like they're so hard to score against, but then they've got like these intercepting players like Lloyd, the Lizard.
Yeah, Nick Blake.
Yeah, he goes well. The McCartan brothers now. Dane Rampy's been doing his thing for a long time, so I think Aaron Francis potentially is like a replacement for Dane Rampy, although probably plays a little less harder checking game.
Yeah.
Similar sort of skill set. Can jump, can run, can do most things, can play high, can play tall, can play small. So I think it's a good get by them. And the last one, Western Bulldogs, they get in Liam Jones. I think I really do think that's the steal of the trade period.
Oh, steal. Got him for free.
Rory Lobb joins the club. Do you like Rory Lobb at the Western Bulldogs? They've got Sam Darcy, Jamal Hagan, Aaron Norton. They've got Josh Bruce. There's 4 key position guys. Other than Josh Bruce, I have the other 3 in front of him in the starting forward position.
Yeah, I do as well. I think, but the benefit with him is you can chop out. He chops out in the ruck well. I think so.
You can't play all 4 of those.
No,
in
you
the same
can't.
team.
You can't play all 4 of those in the same team. But I think he probably slots in there, and I think he'll be a good fit. At least he wants to be there.
They lose Lockie Hunter and Josh Dunkley out of their midfield as well. So
That does hurt him.
yeah, it's probably a C for Western Bulldogs.
I agree.
That's it. That's done. That's dusted.
Trade period.
Trade period.
Done.
Was it fun?
Oh, nah. It never is, I think. It's all like, it's just, you sit there and you wait and you watch, and then all of a sudden players are getting stupid amounts of money on really big deals, and I'm sitting here twiddling my thumbs, not getting anything.
You are with Hamish Brayshaw, Will Scovers, speaking about the trade period. I hope you've enjoyed it because Hamish didn't by the sounds of it. We are going to finish off with one question. It's come in.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't have the notes in front of me what the email is. Yes, I do. FootyCast at shelterbrewing.com.au. Now, I'm going to read you this because I think potentially you may be able to answer it. And if you can't, you can't.
Understood.
Hey, Scully and Skeet, a.k.a. Hammer.
Yep.
I have been thinking about the comparisons that get made by the general public when it comes to the AFL compared to the AFLW. Mm-hmm. Right? So this is relevant to you, given that you are midfield coach of the AFLW team.
Correct.
I think they're ridiculous after hearing you guys speak about it on the Trade Week preview show. The way I like to look at it, you look when the VFL started in the late 1800s and early 1900s, there was low scores, and we see in the current AFLW competition. The women have to start somewhere, just like the men did 125 years ago. The AFLW has reduced game time, only 15 minutes and time on, in only the last 2 minutes of the quarter compared to the males, 20 minutes plus time on. So obviously there's going to be some more scoring in the males compared to the women's. I just thought I'd point that out for listeners at home. Kind regards, Nino. Your thoughts, Hamish?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think obviously the game isn't as high paced and it's not as big a scoring, but there's plenty of factors that 15 minutes, 16 minute plus 2 minute time on. You play on the same size ovals as the men do, and the women can't kick it as far.
Yep.
And we're only in our 7th season of the competition, so it's getting a lot better. But I think you just have to look at. There was a game a few weeks ago, Brisbane versus Adelaide, Brisbane versus Melbourne, who were the 2 top teams, and that was that was a really good game of football. I think what it would do for the public to see where women's football is headed, I think it'd be a really good idea to do potentially like a State of Origin game or an All-Stars versus Victoria or something, the best of the best, because I think the way that the game is played at the moment, with all 18 teams and everyone being involved in the AFLW, the standard is growing, but it's not at the level now where the AFL is at the moment, because we're 130 years into the competition. But I think given time, it's certainly going to grow. There's plenty. Auskick is almost 50-50 boys to girls now, and so the game is just becoming more and more popular with women, and it'll just become better and better at the next level. But I think to highlight that, I think an All-Stars game would be incredible.
I think it's difficult for you to comment on it given that you're working in the industry, but from where I sit, I started commentating women's footy about 3 years ago. The game has gone from strength to strength.
Yep.
I initially, my first couple of games, I was like, gee, this standard's poor, right? And it was because my mindset was comparing it to the men's game.
Yep.
But if you bring yourself out of that and you just actually watch it for what it is, a contest between two teams, doesn't matter about men or women, it's actually intriguing because as soon as you stop comparing it to the men's game, I think physically it's going to be very difficult for the women to ever be up to the standard of the men because that's how it goes. Men and women are very physically different. But the women's game is improving. The skills are getting better. The overall tactical nature of the games is improving. And the contests are good. Yes, they're not high scoring, but if you just accept it's not going to be high scoring, they're enjoyable to watch. So I've certainly become a fan, and I really enjoy calling them and watching them, and I know you enjoy coaching them. So my point on that email would be, it's difficult to compare the two games, and that's where some people run a croft. I do have one more email to get to, and we'll finish off on this. It's entitled GWS and Gold Coast are a joke.
Understood.
Hey lads, I had a thought the other day about what an absolute bloody failure GWS and Gold Coast have been. Not only are the two clubs themselves basket cases, now they've gone and thrown the competitive balance of the rest of the league with the trades they are forced into thanks to their dire salary cap situations. Right now, they aren't much more than a feeder system for the big Vic clubs. It doesn't look like changing anytime soon either. What is the pathway to these clubs getting 20 to 25,000 fans at home games? Tough to see it happening from where they sit now. Side note, lay off Skeeter. Wear your crown with pride, Short King. There you go. Cheers, Clappy. There you go. How do we get Gold Coast and GWS to better pastures? I'll start. It's difficult to maintain players in non-AFL states. So you take specific culture over a long period of time to keep those players going. Now, Sydney have long had this Bloods culture, and from all reports, speaking to a few guys that have been there and that are there currently, they really buy into the fact that there's a draw home, and they almost use that to bond the players closer together. We've seen Brisbane turn it around to an extent, become kind of a destination club. I think GWS and Gold Coast both have those abilities. Gold Coast, bloody great place to live. We lived there. We lived there for 8 weeks on the hub. Could have easily moved there, and so they should be using that. Like Geelong kind of use it, close to the Surf Coast compared to Melbourne teams. They use it as a destination. I think Gold Coast could do that, and GWS. That's got to appeal to guys that don't love the hustle and bustle. Guys from Vic Country, even guys from WA. Maybe you don't recruit these Vic Metro kids that don't love it.
That is. I've been saying this. I was actually speaking about this with my old man the other day. You, as a club that is wanting to retain players, Greater Western Sydney and Gold Coast, I understand the footy, non-footy state thing and Brisbane and Sydney, but they were relocated teams, so they obviously had an established fan base. But for these new teams, don't draft a Vic Metro kid. Yeah, you just can't do it. Draft a kid who's been living 4 hours out of the city from Echuca or something that has no idea of what's the draw home. Go and fish for an hour, or go and go and throw hay bales around. Like, you need a kid who is a well-grounded, disciplined, and has had to cut his teeth in a hard life living in the country. Yeah, who then goes to a club like the Gold Coast and finds 4 or 5 other country Victorian kids who all of a sudden they just bond together, and that's your core of your group.
And then they learn to live in the big city together, kind of thing, right? And that's
but I think all that happened, like, you look at it, all the players in my opinion, a lot of the players in the last 10 years that have decided to come home, no one's done it name the last country kid that says, I want to come home.
Don't do that to me.
Because you're not coming home. You're coming to a city. You're not going home to your, out to Lakes Entrance or wherever the hell you live, Xavier Ellis. But, you're coming home. If you're a city boy, you're coming home to the city. So don't draft kids from the city.
There you go. Hamish Brayshaw, final say. I like it. Very, very, very good. If you want to send in an email, send it in to us, footycast@shelterbrewing.com.au. Got to be honest, I think they were 2 of the best things we've covered the whole show. So if you want more of that, send us an email, footycast@shelterbrewing.com.au. Follow us on socials, Shelter Footycast. What's your socials, Hammer?
Sugar Bray on Instagram, and probably not going to give my email out, and I don't have Twitter.
Very good. Watch us on YouTube, listen to us on podcast, Shelter Brewing, born and brewed in Busselton. See you next week.